Okay, welcome to Shouting from the Sidelines. I am delighted to be joined today by Ricky Lam. Ricky is somebody who it would have been easier to get David Beckham on this podcast than it has been Ricky. He's somebody I've wanted on for ages because, for reasons why we'll go into shortly. He's got a lot of good experience working with children, working with parents. There's loads of hints and tips today to help you in this area. But Ricky's trained hundreds of black belts. He is the owner of Premier Martial Arts. He's got a couple of schools in Leeds, amongst other things. But I'm going to let Ricky give you a better introduction and tell him a little bit more about yourself. Ricky, nice to have you with us.
Yep, good to finally make it. Thanks for being patient. So I'm the master instructor of Premier Martial Arts in Leeds. We have two schools, one in Bramley, which has been we've been operating for about 15 years now, and currently we opened a new one in North Leeds, and that is a couple months old really. I started martial arts when I was 6. My dad was my first instructor, and his dad was his instructor, and my great-granddad was his instructor. Nice. So I've come from a long line of martial arts instructors in the family, so that's partly explains my passion for teaching martial arts and training in martial arts itself. I currently have 4 black belts in different martial arts systems, and my highest grade is a 6th degree black belt in Premier Martial Arts. And but more importantly, over the years, as you said, I've been able to train and grade my students to black belt level, over 100 of them, and have positively impacted over thousands of families in the last 15 years that I've taught martial arts in Leeds.
Brilliant. And that's what we're going to talk about today, because martial arts is something that I personally believe is a fantastic thing for a child or an adult to be a part of and to go through that journey. We're going to talk today about the black belt mentality and about how parents can help keep their children motivated and not be quitters. But I think martial arts in particular, there's so much more to it than what the layman thinks about martial arts and black belts and things. They think about the kicks and the spins and everything else. But as we'll explain, there's so much more to it, which will help children now and later in life in terms of patience, discipline, character building, confidence, resilience, all the things that we as parents want our child to grow and develop in. So, as I say, I'm really looking forward to getting through this with you today. And the first question, Ricky, was, what, in your experience, separates a black belt child to a child who doesn't go on to that level?
Believe it or not, the one thing that doesn't separate a black belt child from a child that doesn't actually get to black belt level is actually the physical ability. That's probably one of the last things we look at, or one of the last reasons, and it's more to do with mindset than anything else. At Premier Martial Arts, we have a saying, and it's a black belt is just a white belt who never gave up, and that's something that I like to repeat quite a bit, because to me, the kids that got to black belt are the ones who really wanted it, who would do anything to get there. It doesn't matter how tough the class was, how long it took them to get there, what the setbacks are or were, they'll still carry on and keep going. Whereas the kids who don't get there, I suppose those are the children who might not have that mindset or might not have given it enough time for that mindset to develop. And that's part of what we do at Premier Martial Arts is, as you mentioned before, it's not just about kicking and punching. To me, that's the byproduct of martial arts, of what we do anyway. What we do is empower lives through martial arts, and that is the character development part. That's more important. And with that comes the perseverance, comes the honesty, the courtesy, the work ethic. That's what we like to do and develop in our students. So to go back to the question of what makes a black belt kid a black belt kid is the mindset. Because if somebody wants to be a black belt, but they don't have quite the physical ability to get there, as long as they want it enough and they're willing to put the time and energy in, then eventually they'll get there. It might be in 5 years, it might be in 10 years, But eventually, if they want it enough, they'll get there because they'll put the time in to develop.
And that's the thing. I think when you talk about success for our children, that it doesn't need to be a trophy. It doesn't need to be a belt even, does it? It's the thing that journey to black belt or to getting into a football team or whatever. It's the things that happen within that, isn't it? And their success for my children in particular would be they are courteous, they're well mannered, they're patient, they're resilient, confident, they persevere, all those things that you've just said there that sort of separate that. And that's what we're trying to get at today with the podcast. It's your child might not be in martial arts, but we're talking about that black belt mentality, and in inverted commas, the black belt mentality could be related to anything that they do. It doesn't have to be a martial art. It could be anything at school. It could be another sport or whatever. But that black belt mentality of wanting to reach that highest level and not give up is huge. You've obviously met hundreds, thousands of children, whether they've gone through white belt to black belt or stopped halfway or given up at the first hurdle. In your experience, what's the difference between the parents of a black belt child and a parent of a child who maybe gives up too soon?
I guess, well, this is going to be a long conversation. The main difference is the level of support that a black belt child's parents offers. But, I guess a black belt child's parent is very involved, but not too involved in that they end up coaching the kid. They're involved, they support them, they give them good advice. They're there for when there's setbacks, they're there for when there's victories to be, celebrated. Whereas the kids' parents, the drop-off parents, their kids generally don't become black belts, because they don't know what's going on in the classroom. They don't communicate with the instructors. And sometimes it's very difficult to get hold of them, to be honest, to have a little, chat with them about the children's kind of progress. So it's mainly about the support around it. And also it's about the parents' mindset as well at the end of the day, because, where do children learn from? Where do they develop the habits from? Develop from the parents. So if the parents have that kind of, I guess, growth mindset, where they're not afraid of setbacks and they love challenges and they love to learn something new, then the kids are going to get that too. So that is a big difference there. As I said, it's about the support that's around the kids, and parents being there for them is what I've seen as the biggest difference. And black belt kids' parents love to come up to me and talk about the progress, ask me how the kids can improve. They either send me messages or emails or just trying to, talk to me in person. And those are the kids that will end up doing well, are the ones that are, with parents who are show that level of support.
Yeah, brilliant. You've got as well with children in sport, in martial arts and so forth. It's never a linear process, is it? It's never we start at white belt and we just carry on going like that to black belt and we just take each thing as it comes. It's very much, and I always talk about whenever I see you, I talk about an infographic that you put out on social media a while back, which was basically a graph going up and down like that, and that was the child's journey across white belt to black belt, because they're not always going to have the highs, they're going to have some lows, and it's how we as parents can help them, which we'll talk about during the lows, but also during the highs as well, which can be important. Let's talk about the challenging times first. So when a child starts, they'll have that initial buzz, they'll be interested, it's a new thing, they maybe get the first couple of belts, but then all of a sudden they come into a challenge, and that might be a challenge at the sessions, it might be something that's going on at home that's affecting them or whatever. How can parents help their children when they're facing those challenging times, Ricky, in your experience?
Well, let's go back to, we actually addressed that right at the beginning in the first class. Before they've even signed up to become a student here, we addressed that point, that at some point in the future, no matter how much they love martial arts, there's going to be some time when they're not going to want to come training. where they'll rather stay at home and play on the new game, or go out and play with their friends in the garden, or just simply not want to come to class because they could be quite tired from school. And we make the parents not so much promise, but make a commitment to their child's progress and attendance. That's going to happen, and that's when parents need to kind of like, be the decision maker and say, no, you're going to martial arts tonight, or you're going to football tonight, because we made that commitment to be a black belt. We made that commitment to be a champion, and champions don't take days off when they don't feel like it. They carry on with it, and that works for most children, when the parents kind of decide for them, because I said to a lot of parents, like, if your child didn't want to go to school, would you let them just stay at home? No, you wouldn't. But do you believe that what I do with the children is educational and it's good for them? Yes, you do. So therefore, then you don't let them take a day off from coming to martial arts. Do you believe that going to foot tech or going to play football is great for them as well, for the fitness, for everything else around it? Yes, it is. So then when they want to take a day off, then they can. It's only an hour or half an hour or whatever, how long the session is. Go to the session and then have the rest of the time off. Maybe give them some sort of reward for it afterwards. Not too many rewards to kind of bribe them into going to training. They need to want to go and do that themselves. But there are going to be certain times when you might have to, give them a little reward for it. However, going back to what you said about how I would tackle it is that I encourage parents to speak to the instructors and coaches, and it doesn't matter. You're a parent, I'm a parent, and we know what it's like. We could tell our kids a lot of things that we want them to do, but all they needed was somebody else, an external voice, somebody to look up to, a teacher at school or martial arts coach or a foot tech, coach. You need that external voice just to tell them. They go, okay, and they do it. So that would be the first protocol, is to speak to the instructors, speak to the coaches, and then find out their why. Why is it that they're not enjoying it? Because it could be something that happened on the field or something happened in class, and it might be something very small that they just need reassuring.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I tell the parents is it's very normal for kids to go through this. And I say to the kids, what's your favorite food? And ice cream, chocolate. And even with your favorite food, you love it and you have it every day. But if you have too much of it, eventually you get sick of it. And there'll be a day that even with my little boy, Jack, he loves ice cream. And I'll be like, if he eats too much ice cream, there'll be a day where I say to him, Jack, would you like some ice cream? And he'll say no. And you'll be like, huh? That's just weird. Is there something wrong? It's just that he's had too much of it. So that happens with training, with food, whatever. So just to reassure the parents and the kids that is normal. And he'll come out the other end, or she'll come out the other end a lot stronger if they push through it.
Communication, you mentioned it there. That is something we've learned so much over the last few years of doing foot tech and coaching the children we coach, is that as much as we'd love to believe that every child loves every single session we ever put on, it isn't going to happen. We can't please everybody, and there's going to be sometimes, even with the children that would die to be there, they're sometimes not going to want to do it for whatever reason. It could be a variety of things, like you've said, but the parents that actually go out of their way to approach the coaches in the right way to inform us, those kids, then it's made such a difference. It might just be we overpraise that child at the next session for little things. It might be a certificate or just something so small, and the change in them after that is massive. It is absolutely massive, and it just comes down to that communication. I think some parents can be quick to pull their child out of an activity, regardless of how long they've been there, just because they maybe have a couple of bad sessions. But if the coaches aren't aware, kids are very good at hiding things as well, as we know. And if the coaches aren't aware, they can't react to that. And it's huge.
I mean, it's true. What you said there about whether it's given extra praise the next time in class, it's happened so many times when the parents have come up to me or one of my instructors and said, so-and-so, that their child is having had a couple of bad classes. What should we do? We're worried whether they want to continue or not. And then all it takes is for us to, what we use, spotlight them, is basically, we're in the middle of the class and we have to be genuine about it. It needs to be something that they actually are doing well. And then we're like, guys, stop. Look at Harry. I want Harry to show you his kick because that was amazing and I was really impressed with him. And then he shows the kick and then everyone gives a big clap, a round of applause. And then he's like the happiest student ever and he had a great class and he's no longer in that dip in his training. So that communication is so important. So don't just leave. If your child is having a hard time at any activity, don't just leave it and just quit, because then you're just training your kids to quit. When they're going with stuff, quit. It's okay to quit. It's not okay to quit. I said to the kids, during that drill, during those burpees that I gave you, who thought it was really challenging and you wanted to quit? And I said, now be honest. And a lot of kids would put their hands up and said, it's all right to think about wanting to quit because it's tough, but it's not all right to follow through, because winners don't quit. And if you guys want to be winners, then don't quit and don't set that habit of as a parent, you don't like to play football and outside in the cold. That's all right. We'll just quit for the winter and you come back in summer. It's not. It's if you're gonna do it, you're gonna do it. And to me, that's important. Don't set that habit of quitting for your kids, because it will carry on in life.
It's the cold, Ricky, and you and I speak a lot. That's a podcast in itself, because that is one of the biggest bugbears. So yeah, we're just going to cancel and we'll see you in the spring. It's like, no, you won't, because your place will have been gone by then to somebody that actually wants to commit to it properly. But yeah, the communication thing is huge. And when we're talking here, we're using words like black belt, we're using words like winners and champions. What we want parents to understand is we're not talking about children lifting a trophy and being the most successful in their team or the most successful at their karate class or wherever. It's talking about that mentality behind it. It's creating a champion. It's creating somebody who doesn't quit, because, and we're going to get onto this shortly, at some point in their lives, they will finish playing junior football. They'll finish doing martial arts and they're going to go into the real world. They go into the real world with a champion's mindset. They're probably going to go on to succeed a lot more than somebody who's been taught to quit at any hurdle, because life's going to get harder than it is right now. So the flip side to this, Ricky, and this is I think equally important, is when a child's flying. Yep. And they're smashing everything to pieces. They're doing so well. We love that as coaches. Parents love that as well. But what do you think parents should do at that point, at the sort of pinnacle, when they are doing so well?
Well, I mean, if a child is doing that well in any sort of given activity, obviously they most likely will have developed a growth mindset, which means, as we talked about before, is that they're up for challenges, they're up for learning new things, they're not afraid of setbacks and failure. So it's a great time to encourage them to do, to explore and maybe do a little bit more. The reason why I say a little bit more is because, as children, we want them to have time to be children. So we don't want to go, he's a high-achieving child, I'm going to make them do this, and this, and they don't have any downtime to just chill out and be children, because that's really important. What I mean by a little bit more is maybe explore doing the current sport that they're doing really well at a higher level, see how that goes, or even, try and do other activities that are different to what they're already doing, to see how they do in that, to kind of build a more well-rounded kind of experience for the kids kind of growing up. But as I said, it's not just about making them do as much as possible, because and I've seen that. We've had a lot of high-achieving kind of kids who've gone on to be great black belts, and school exams are great in terms of the results, and they're going on to go to very prestigious universities and things like that. But these children did great, but they never ever had time for themselves, and I think that's really important. And also the other thing is that I've seen as well is when kids are doing great, parents become kind of complacent, and kind of just the praising stops, the support kind of stops, because my child is very self-motivated, I'll just let them do their own thing. But that's not when it should stop. They should continue with that support and continue with that motivation, rather than taking a back seat, because they're still children at the end of the day. And no matter how self-disciplined and how self-motivated they are, they're going to still need the parent support, and also the parents kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Parents kind of approval. And yeah.
You used the term there, growth mindset, a little earlier, and I don't know if you've read it, but there's a brilliant book from years ago by Matthew Syed, Bounce. Sorry, no, it's not. That's a different one. It's Carol Dweck. Carol Dweck, and she talks about the growth mindset and the fixed mindset, which is it's become a lot more common now, and how children with the growth mindset are those that they're praised on effort as opposed to result, and that's a key thing for parents listening is if your children or child is doing fantastically well at something consistently, try to get away from praising a goal or a belt or a trophy and get towards praising the effort it took to get there. Because if they see that you've praising a result, once they hit that target, that's it. They've got nothing else to achieve. So it's the effort that took it to get there. Praise that, because then they'll carry on. Can they work harder? Can they work smarter, and so forth? So it's a huge thing, because that is equally important when the children are doing well as opposed to when they're going through challenges, because that can be detrimental. There's in football terms, there's kids that will join academies very, very early and have everything given, but then compared to those kids that have had to work really, really hard to get to these pro clubs and things like that later in life, you're probably going to find that they go on to succeed more because they've had to fight for it a little bit harder and work at that little bit harder. We were talking before about holding kids back.
Mm-hmm.
So holding them back in terms of classes, and with us it'd be age groups and things like that, because we know deep down it's going to be better for them longer term. This is a hard thing for parents to get their heads around in many instances, and we wanted to talk a little bit about that now. Why do you think it's sometimes the right thing to do, Ricky, in your experience?
I think for parents, first of all, they need to understand that our job is to create the best athlete, student, but not just physically, but also mentally, and making sure that we look after them. And that's what we want. We want all the kids to do great. We want them to move up belts. We want them to move up to next age group. We don't really want to have that awkward conversation with the parents to say, by the way, I don't think that little Billy can move up to the next class. He probably should stay in this class for a while. We only have those conversations because we really need to. So it's important that coaches are honest with parents, especially because a lot of times when we do like an initial interview, when kids come in for intros, one of the main things that parents are looking for is confidence, developing confidence. So if a child isn't ready to go up to the next class, and we put them to the next class, and the pace is a little bit too fast for them, the other kids are a little bit bigger and more skilled, then their confidence is going to get it's going to take a hit, and that's the last thing we want. Whereas it's better to keep them in the current class until they're ready, and parents need to understand that everybody develops in a different pace, and that's okay. And kids, if parents understand that, then there's more of a chance the kids can understand it. But as parents, we do love to think that our kids are amazing, and that they're somewhat maybe better than they actually are. But they got to trust parents need to trust the instructor and the coach's opinion, because that's why they brought the kids to us. And sometimes I've had these awkward conversations, and parents and kids have actually come back years down the line and thanked me for holding them back, because they learned a lot more from those experiences than they learned from I guess moving up. From myself, from a personal point of view, in terms of competitions, I competed a lot when I was younger, and I learned so much more when I lost a competition than when I was winning.
Yeah.
And it's the same with setbacks and challenges. There's a lot more to be gained from them. Not that you want to intentionally put yourself in a losing situation all the time, but it's just, there's a positive to it, and parents need to kind of see that.
The confidence thing, as you mentioned there, is just massive. That's sort of the key to it all for me. If you've got a child that's developing confidence and is a confident child, then when they do have these setbacks, it's less of an impact. When they are doing really well, they continue to do really well because it's building and building. And the the age thing, the age groups, the ability groups and things like that, it is a touchy subject for a lot of people, and we've had our battles with it before. But unfortunately, as we've had to stick to our guns because we know that it's better for the child, and we have lost children because of it. We've lost parents because they can't get their head around it. And as you said, some have come back. Some you'll see go into other groups, and then another group, and then another group, and another group do it because they fundamentally won't listen. But in football terms, in particular, it's done on school. A lot of stuff is done on school year, football and a lot of children's activities. If you've got a child that was born on the 1st of September compared to a child that was born the 31st of August the following year, that's a full year. And they're in the same year group at school. But that child on the 1st of September has had a full year's development more, which is massive, particularly at the younger age, compared to the child that was born 31st of August. So there's these things to bear in mind. And as you've said, children develop at different rates. But when you've got a young child in terms of a young in that age group, in that year group, they possibly need a little bit of help, and that help can come by knocking down to the year below, and building that confidence as a result of actually being able to get involved more. So yeah, I hope some parents listen to that and take solace from it, really.
Well, yeah, I mean, I hope so. What we do in the first year of when the kids come to class is that we focus on developing that confidence and that control, and that kind of mindset, so that when it comes to, so we would say like 70% of our time is focused on that character development in the first year, on the confidence and perseverance and all that. And then the second year it goes to like 60%, and the third year it goes to 50%. And because we know that once they have developed that mindset and confidence, we can push them a little bit more. But if we push them too hard at the beginning and they don't already have that confidence, then they're going to crumble, and it's not going to be great for them. So confidence for any sport, whether it's football or martial arts, is so important to develop first and foremost. And then you can, then you could move on and push them a little bit harder in terms of, physically.
Well, there was the guy you were telling me about before, wasn't there? That I don't know if you want to name names, but well, you tell us that story about this exact example.
I'm sure I wouldn't say his surname, but Mr. Thomas, as the kids know him now. He was actually one of my first students when we opened up full time in our academy, like a long time ago, and he got to a certain grade. I think it was just before you went from orange belt to purple belt, which is from beginner stage to intermediate stage. And I decided that at that point that he wasn't at the level that I needed him to be at to move up to the next class. So I held him back, and for probably like 3 cycles, which is about 9 months work.
Wow.
But he kept on coming back, and the parents was really supportive. They absolutely trusted my opinion. And then years later, he became a really good black belt and also an instructor. And now he's gone on to university. He still comes back in the summer or Christmas holidays and stuff like that, jumps in classes, asks me if I need help in teaching the kids, and he's a great role model for all the kids. So that's someone that maybe didn't have that kind of natural ability, but as you said, but they had to try so hard to get to that point that they that stayed with them for life. Not just the physical skills, but the mentality of who they had to become to get to black belt has changed their life forever. And that's what it's about. As we talked about, when parents kind of let the kids quit a little bit too soon, in terms of what we do, it takes a couple of years for the real magic to happen in martial arts. A child that doesn't change their habits and behavior within a couple of months, you'll see changes. Don't get me wrong, you will see changes, but for those changes and those habits to be ingrained and dialed in, it takes a little bit longer than parents would like. You talk about courtesy all the time and you talk about this, but then at home, they're not doing that. I'm like, yeah, but just give us a little bit more time. It's just like going back to, we talk about this, about dieting and about different kind of nutritional plans and things like that. How hard is it I said to his parents, have you guys ever, like made any New Year's kind of resolutions? Yes, I have. Have you followed them through? No, it kind of goes a bit quiet. And said, well, this is what we're kind of trying to do with your kid. And they don't necessarily consent to the fact that we're working on the discipline and focus. So that was never their goal. So we're kind of disguise it a little bit so they don't realize that that's what we're trying to do with them. So if you, as an adult, wanted to lose weight or wanted to do this but never really followed through with it, how hard is it for a 5-year-old to do? So just give them a bit of space, give us a little bit of time as instructors to help them develop into people and black belts the way we want them to.
Yeah, and thinking about Thomas there, you held him back for 9 months, which must have been excruciating for him at times. But then look at him now; he's a confident lad. He's a black belt. He's running classes and things like that. And again, going back to this success mindset, this champion mindset we're talking about, that's huge. How many adults would want the confidence to be able to stand in front of a class of people and talk openly? What's the thing? Public speaking is one of the biggest fears of people. But yeah. Thomas has gone through this, and now he's happy to come and teach a class of children martial arts and things, which is massive. That's success to us, because that leads on nicely to. I was really keen to chat to you about this because a while back you'd said to me, at some point, the children will stop martial arts. Mm-hmm. At some point, they will leave it and go off, as they will junior football. At some point, all this comes to an end. So it's not what they're doing now; it's what we're doing now to prepare them for that. And can you just talk a little bit more about that, Ricky? About how, because I think some parents get bogged down in the detail, don't they? About they should be doing this, should be winning this, and should be getting that. But we're not really there for that, are we?
No, we're not. And I used to take it so personally. I used to get really frustrated when kids quit or when adults quit. But then until someday, one of my mentors said to me, you know what, Ricky? Everybody quits one day. Whether it's 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years, 50 years, whatever, everybody will stop martial arts at some point in their life. But what's important is the person they become during that and the lessons they learn. It's the journey more than anything else. What's that saying, that quote that, set a goal so big that you can't achieve it until you become the person that can, and that is true, to get to, and when we talk about, as you said, when we talk about champions, we talk about black belts, we talk about winners, we're talking about black belts in life and champions in life and winners in life. We're not talking about, as you said, lifting trophies. We're talking about that mindset and that, no quitting mindset. Nowadays, now that I'm getting older and I've been teaching martial arts for a while, I see the kids that I've taught go on to they've quit martial arts, which, to me, that's fine, but they've taken so much more from martial arts. As I say, the kicking and punching is the byproduct. The great thing about martial arts is the character development, who to become. And these guys have taken and they've gone on to be doing great things with their lives, and it's amazing to see. And once in a while I get emails back saying, Mr. Lam, I wanted to thank you for all the years of training, because if it wasn't because of what you taught me, then I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today. So which is what it's all about. The fact that they don't do martial arts anymore, would I prefer it if they do? Yes, of course. But it's a lot more satisfying to see them succeeding in life because of the lessons I taught them.
Yeah, it's brilliant, and again, just to reiterate, and this is it. This doesn't mean that every parent listening to this needs to rush and sign the children up to martial arts. Or I'd recommend it because I think it's a brilliant thing. But we're talking here about things that sport and martial arts that can help with above and beyond taking a medal home and things like that. This is about preparing them for when they're not children anymore. And as Ricky's just said there, he's given you a couple of fantastic examples of people that do go on to achieve what we class as success. They do get that winner mentality, that black belt mentality. And that leads on to you, Ricky, because obviously for yourself, you were taught by your dad, who was taught by his dad and his dad, and you have now become not just a successful martial artist, but a really successful businessman. How did martial arts and sport in general, how did that influence you and prepare you for what you've gone on to?
Well, going back to it's the mindset. It's the mindset more than anything else. It's the classes that I was in when I was younger, or even up to, recent times, where they were super tough. I didn't really want to, in my head, I'm like, why am I doing this to myself? But then it's the empowerment that you get from training hard and knowing that you can get through the other side. Because when whatever you're doing, whether it's sport or your aim is to be a successful businessman, there are going to be setbacks. There are going to be challenges. You are going to be taken out your comfort zone. And when you do any sport, those things happen in the class, in the training session. And if you learn from those lessons, then they can directly translate to your life. So in terms of business, there's so many times when in training or in tests that I've been, taken to the edge, and it was absolutely horrible. But I got through it. And just like in business, there are times when it's been such, testing times, the COVID pandemic, for example, in recent times, a lot of people would just give up and go, right, I'm not doing it. I'm just going to give up. But my training and the lessons that I learned along the way is not letting me do that, because, over the years of training, I don't quit. I keep going until I get, until I get to where I need to be. And that's important. And that's what's helped me. And that's what martial arts has taught me. Not just martial arts, when I used to have a CrossFit gym, when, and when we're doing CrossFit workouts and other types of training is, and I say to the guys, after a CrossFit workout, and even after a Krav Maga test, I say to them, that the reason why we train so hard is so that we don't suck at life. And that's the part that, if you can get yourself through these workouts, week in, week out, month in, month out, if you can get yourself through these tests, then you can get through anything in life. Whether it's business challenges or other things that's happening, you can get through it. And that's the reason why, for me, training needs to be, at certain times needs to be difficult or challenging. Because if it was just the same, then you wouldn't grow. As the quote is, if it doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you. So if you want to change, you got to put yourself through those challenges. And that's what martial arts has done for me. And other types of training that I've done in my life is that it's just given me that strong mindset to never quit.
Yeah, definitely. It's with the like the example you just give there, COVID at the minute for business owners is horrific, and certainly you and I have been hit fairly badly with having to pause class and things. Would I have had the mindset I've got to get through it if I'd not done sport as a child? I don't think so, because I don't think I'd ever put myself out of the comfort zones. Whenever I'm having those bad days and I think something's hard, I just take myself back to one of the worst training sessions I've ever been involved in, which was a pre-season for a semi-professional team that they took us to Roundy Park. They made us sprint the lake as fast as we could, which is about a mile, I think. Is it a mile or 1.6 mile, I think?
Yeah.
And so they took our time. We assumed it was just one. They said, right, you've got 5 minutes rest, now you've got to do it again and beat it. So after all that, they took us to the hill. And you'll know which hill I'm talking about, Ricky. It's the one that leads up to the lake when you get right to the top. And they went about 50 yards, 60 yards back from that. We had to sprint to the brow of the hill, up the hill, and then walk back down 10 times. There was guys throwing up in the lake and all sorts afterwards. And I've never felt like that in any training session since. But it was the hardest thing physically I've ever had to do. And then now I just think, with these little things that are going on, it's like, yeah, it wasn't as hard as that.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that parents listening that we advise that your children train to the point of throwing up. But what we're saying is that they're gonna have problems. They're gonna have challenges. It may be they're struggling to get from one belt to the next. It might be that they're struggling to do a particular skill that they really want to learn in football, a kick they want to do in martial arts, whatever it might be. It might be they're struggling with the times tables, but sport can help. It can help them overcome these challenges in their head, which then helps them for the future. Try not to think about the here and now and the success now. Think about what this is helping them with later down the line. Short-term pain, long-term gain. You might have to have the tears. You might have to have the tantrums. But if you can get through that knowing that it's for the greater good, then you're onto a winner, really. Last question for you, Ricky.
Okay.
So really do appreciate your time. I always finish this question. How did your parents influence you to go on to what you've achieved?
It's actually quite funny because it's almost, my parents were almost quite the opposite of the parents that we're talking about in terms of support, because they were really busy. They're from, the kind of first generation from Hong Kong, and all they knew and all they wanted to do was provide for the family. And they had the restaurant business and that's all they did. And I hardly saw my parents when I was growing up, if I'm honest with you. But that was a motivation for me. That's what was driving me to do more and become better, and especially martial arts, because my dad obviously was my teacher, and he was quite critical in terms of my development and progress. And I did more to get their attention, I suppose. To make them kind of give me that attention as a kid, and to get that approval of my dad. My dad was a very old school teacher, and he didn't praise. Nowadays we praise so much. I teach my instructors to different ways of motivation, different ways of praising. My dad never praised me. No matter how hard I trained, he never praised me, and that was my driving factor, I suppose, was to one day get that approval from him. I'm still waiting for that to happen. Because he is very old school. Not only is he grew up in Hong Kong, so the Chinese culture is very much ingrained in him, but he's also an old school kung fu martial arts instructor, and they never generally praise. Even my original instructor, looking back, it was never a high five, good job, awesome work, any of that. It was more like a nod. You walk past you, you're holding your, and they look at you and they go, and then yes, today I got a nod from my instructor, and so for me, my parents influenced me in that in I wouldn't say it was a negative way, but I tried really hard and I trained really hard and I put a lot of time and effort into what I did to get the approval, but at the same time, their work ethic kind of influenced me because they worked so hard in their business to make sure that they could provide for us, and that was inspirational because looking back and thinking about the hours that they spent in the business was a huge amount of time, and that was for the family, and obviously I'm really appreciative of that, but also that kind of makes me think as you are as well as me. We have a family now, and we talk about this all the time about balancing it, balancing our life so that we have a great kind of business and coaching and do what we love and passionate about, but at the same time we also need to have time for our family, and that's kind of what I've learned from my parents as well. So it's good and bad for my parents, and it's I wouldn't ever change it, but I make sure that I'm there for my boys for when they're training, for whatever they're doing that I didn't really have growing up. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much how I was influenced by them.
It goes back to what you said earlier, though, about how we as parents, our actions can basically dictate the mindset of our children. When you were talking about quitters and things like that, if parents happy for their children to quit, or children see parents quitting or not going out when it's cold and those sorts of things, it becomes ingrained in them. But your parents were clearly grafters, and that's rubbed off on you, to not only go on to be, as we said before, a successful martial artist, but then to have a grow and run a really successful business as a result of seeing them work so hard. So there are some lessons to be learned there. And your dad sounds very much like my granddad who raised me, very much he did praise, but he was clever in how he did it. And I always think about these these books and stuff now, like we talked about earlier on, these self-help books and the Carol Dweck book about praising effort and so forth. It's like, I think the old school generation just had that was just how you did it. It wasn't like over the top, and all of a sudden it's become a new thing. But he was very good at praising me to the thing that I'd done, but then asking questions about what else. And I'll never forget. I told him after, I think it was about 2 years it took. We got to 100 members at FootTech way back in 2016 or something like that. And I told him I was so excited. It was like a big milestone. He's like, "Oh yeah, it's all right." And I think you can get to 200. It's like, and I could tell him that we coach every single child in England, in the UK, and he'd turn around and say, "I reckon you could do the world."
Well, that's pretty old school, and it's great though. I mean, it goes back to when I say to parents and also my instructors that whenever you give feedback or praise, it needs to be genuine praise. Because if you don't, then the kids will lose respect and trust for you. If you said to the kid, "Wow, that kick was fantastic," just to give them a praise, when deep down they know that it wasn't a fantastic kick, they'll lose that respect for you. Whereas if you can go up to a child and say, "That's a big improvement from last week," you keep going like that, you're going to make a really good black belt. That's more genuine, and they can appreciate that. So don't, I guess last bit of advice in terms of parents and during times when kids aren't doing great or struggling, or even when they are doing great, is whenever you give feedback, be honest with them. Don't kind of like over exaggerate their achievements because they know whether it's true or not, and that's not what we want.
Yeah, Ricky, thank you so much for your time. I just wanted to finish with asking where people can find out more about you and Premier.
All right, cool. Oh, thank you. So as I said, we have a school in Bramley. The school in Bramley is actually almost at full capacity now, and there's a waiting list there. But if you're in Bramley or in that area, get in contact anyway. Here where I am right now is a new school in North Leeds, and we will be, the grand opening was the 5th of November, but we had to postpone that to next month. So it's and we still have around about 40 places left here. So if you want to, get in contact, we are pmaleeds.com. Or just look for us on Facebook, and we have a couple of pages on Instagram as well. And just get in contact, and we'll, get in contact. We'll give you a call, and we'll go from there.
Ricky, thanks again. There's so much in there for parents to take away, and I've learned a lot as well. I really appreciate that. We might get you on again in the future. Stay safe, and look forward to coming along to the new venue again soon.
Oh yeah. All right. Take care. Thank you very much.
Cheers, Ricky.
All right. Thank you.